As usual, this is a video that I wanted to have finished weeks ago, and I guess this is just becoming a habit for me already, where I have to have something basically finished before I realize that I want to do it a completely different way. And there was a twist this time. Something else happened, something completely changed my perspective on the whole situation. And so I think what I'd like to do here is to tell you a story. I think I've been having a pretty nice summer so far. Lots of generally lazy days, just hanging out, watching movies, eating candy, spending time with people I care about. When July rolled around, I had to fly cross country for a wedding back to Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. And at first, I think the trip was going pretty well. I was hanging out with family. I went to this bizarre Amish-owned all-you-can-eat buffet, complete with horse and buggy parking. I got the suit together. The pants didn't really fit, but it was too late to do anything about that, and it's also my fault in the first place. And then on July 13th, 2024, I went to the wedding. I like weddings in concept, and I think this was a very nice wedding. The ceremony was very sweet. It was meaningful. I think it went very well. But wedding receptions, on the other hand, I know that we don't really know each other that well. So I should mention that I'm one of those people whose social stamina was just gutted by the pandemic, and it was already on the lower end to begin with. So as soon as the toasts started up at the reception, I was out the door. To me, wedding toasts are like karaoke without the music. So I stepped out and I just had to find something to do to pass the time. Like most things in Pennsylvania, this venue happened to be next to some very dense woods, and I don't know, there is something special about the woods in Pennsylvania. They're named after it, for Pete's sake. But I don't know, it's just they're very humid, they're overgrown, and I think also reassuring. There was a nice river going along the tree line. There was a little waterfall there. There were some kids fishing, like just a couple of teenage kids casting their lines into very clear water where you could obviously see that there were no fish. So all in all, I think I spent about 2 hours just walking up and down the river, wearing a suit that didn't fit, mostly pretending to look at something on my phone so that the nearby strangers wouldn't think that I was some kind of a weirdo. Not sure whether I was successful. And I assumed that everything at the reception was going very well. It was a while later when somebody just happened to mention the shooting to me very casually. I think they assumed that I already knew about it. I didn't. And at least for me, and maybe for you as well, but a big, giant family wedding reception is sort of the last place I would like to be when something like that goes down. Like lots of American families, ours is politically split, and just like the style of our family, we're not really the types to get into giant fights, at least not most of the time. So it's not like the party just ground to a halt. Everything seemed to go on just fine, but what I did notice is that there were these little pockets of conversation or argument happening within the reception, just sort of in between the happy, friendly reception stuff that you would expect, the conga lines, you know, the eating of cookies, the dancing to early 2000s pop punk. And really, beyond the specifics of this particular situation, I think this is the kind of scenario that we've all gotten very used to by now, especially those of us in the States. We recognize these kinds of conversations as soon as they start. We know what they're going to sound like, we know the kinds of points that are going to be brought up, and we know that nobody's mind is going to be changed on anything. And worst of all, we know that we can't really get away from it. This decision has already been made for us. Politics have decided to invade our lives on a level that I don't think we've seen for a very long time, at least not in this country. And there are just so many external forces ready and willing to remind us of all this miserable stuff. Obviously, you have the relentless reporting and then the borderline pointless commentary that follows that. But of course, because this is an election year, all of that is compounded by political advertising. And of course, in the modern day and age, that can take the form of not just traditional video ads and commercials, but also web placements, social media advertising, emails, text messages, and even door-to-door canvassing. It's too much. And I am not surprised to see people feeling completely exhausted, myself included. If anything, it's surprising to me that political campaigns think somehow that all of this advertising is still a good and necessary thing. And again, I had a whole other script for this video, and it was more in the traditional style. I was going into the specific tactics and techniques that are used in political advertising and have been used for a very, very long time. But to be honest, if we're here to talk about surviving political ads, then I don't think we really need any of that. Because regardless of which tactics are being used to do it, political ads are trying to do just one thing. They're trying to elicit a very base level emotional response from their target audiences. And because human emotional response really isn't that complicated to begin with, that's a pretty easy job, especially when the humans you're trying to influence are already in this extremely agitated state when it comes to politics. However, that single-mindedness, that simplicity of intent also gives us a very simple answer for how we can survive and even resist political advertising. Don't let it get to you. Easier said than done. Resisting emotional appeals will be different for everyone out there, but for the sake of this video, I would like to offer some general suggestions. And this is what I've come up with. Avoid, absorb, divert. And they're meant to be worked through in this order in sort of levels of increasing intensity. So first of all, when trying to protect your sanity, avoidance of political ads is completely valid. That does not mean avoidance of all political engagement and action. Those can actually be positive, which we'll talk about soon. But where ads are concerned, and I've said it before, they do not deserve your attention or respect on any level. In terms of avoiding traditional video ads or commercials, it's absolutely worth staying away from traditional cable and satellite TV as much as possible. And that's because you have basically no control over what you're being served, how often you're going to be served commercials and things like that. It's just not a great place to be in terms of entertainment spaces. Now, when we switch over to internet entertainment, internet browsing, you do have a lot more control. For one thing, you can use ad blockers as much as possible, despite the fact that sites like this one are trying their darndest to make that really difficult to do. It is still possible. That's something you can try out. And of course, that also extends to general internet browsing. Another tip that I'm sort of hesitant to recommend is using a VPN for your general internet browsing. I am not sponsored, and in fact, I generally hate VPNs. That's another topic. But in this case, you're much less likely to be served ads about a US presidential election if the ISP thinks that you're browsing from somewhere like Iceland, which I just mentioned because that's someplace that I would really like to visit. It's unrelated. Also, maybe goes without saying, but please be careful with your browsing habits in the run-up to an election, because if you just make even one simple Google search for something related to that election or hot topic issues, you are probably going to be served weeks worth of recommendations in one form or another that have to do with the election. Thankfully, avoiding email marketing is easy enough. Just filter, unsubscribe, and block as needed. I'm confident that you know how to do that stuff, so we're just going to move on to text marketing, which is definitely more difficult to deal with. So I did some research, and to start out, if you have registered to vote and registered with one of the two major political parties in the US, Democrat or Republican, then it's basically guaranteed that your phone number is already in their CRM systems, which means that they can send you text messages related to your location and relevant campaigns. Basically, whenever they want, you can opt out of those campaigns by texting back stop, preferably in all caps, just as a cathartic thing. However, and this is something that I've already seen quite a bit this year, is the unofficial text campaigns coming from who knows where. They obviously have a vested interest in one candidate or another, but they do not seem official by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, that also means that you can't expect them to play by the rules. If you text back stop, they might, continue to send you text messages anyway. So in a case like that, it is possible to submit an official complaint to the FCC, but if we're being honest, the chances of that actually resulting in a resolution of the problem, especially quickly, it just seems very, very slim. And lastly, unfortunately, door-to-door campaigning, or canvassing as it's sometimes called, is still legal in the United States somehow, and there doesn't seem to be any official means of preventing these visits or requesting that, they just skip your address. Now, of course, the easiest way of avoiding these in-person political marketing attempts is just to never answer the door. But if that's not your style, I also threw together a flyer that you can tape to your front door if you would like to turn people away as passively as possible. But given how common political advertising is right now and how much money campaigns are spending on these ads, there is still a very good chance that you'll be exposed to political ads at some point. So what do you do then? At least for me, this is where absorbing comes into play. And that basically just means experiencing political ads without taking them seriously and without being the viewer they want you to be. For example, you can try analyzing an ad instead of just watching it passively. That really helps me keep some kind of distance from the intended emotional effects, and it's also something that I've encouraged in a few other videos. Instead of paying attention to sort of the core messaging of the ad, pay attention to the surface level stuff, the production details, stuff like lighting, shot choices, editing, use of stock footage, which is incredibly common in political ads and also very funny. You could also check the ad against this bingo card that I whipped up. These are just ways of thinking instead of feeling while watching an ad. And lastly, what about the worst case scenario? What if you're exposed to some kind of political advertising, or even just like a politically charged interaction that does manage to sway your emotions one way or the other? For my money, the healthiest response is to try and divert that energy to something else by actually doing something in the real world. For example, volunteering for a political campaign is infinitely more fulfilling than arguing with strangers on the internet. And if you are considering that option, my tip would be to volunteer for a local campaign rather than a national campaign. Honestly, the stakes are a lot lower, the people tend to be much friendlier, and I think they'll be more appreciative that you showed up at all. They might even want to get drinks afterwards. Maybe they're big into playing Catan. There's only one way to find out. Obviously, working with a campaign is not the only option here. If you're brave, you can go ahead and work at the level of micro-politics, just speaking with people individually, trying to have fruitful, constructive conversations. Obviously, that can be really challenging as well. So I think another fantastic option is to give some of your time or resources to specific causes that you really care about, because if you think about it, the purpose of elected representatives is supposed to be that they change things in the way that we are hoping to see them changed, to see things protected in the way that we hope them to be protected. However, as we all know, the chances of that actually happening are a complete toss-up, and so instead offer direct support. You can donate to an organization that you think is doing good work. You can volunteer your time, of course. You can also just ask the organization about what are some of the ways you can help out. And if even that sounds like too much, then I just think any kind of action is better than nothing. Exercise, creative outlets, home improvement projects, anything. Just anything to avoid festering on the nationalist imagery and copy-paste rhetoric of political advertising. Ads are unnecessary and ultimately disconnected from whatever they're trying to market. And in the case of contemporary politics, ads are definitely doing more harm than good. I do think I could have done a better job at the wedding. In hindsight, that date is probably going to be seen as historically significant, for better or worse. And from that point of view, it really does make me feel like I could have done more. I could have tried to talk to some more people, try to connect with them on a very personal level, try to, I don't know, see some of the harm that their ideologies are potentially doing. At the same time, all I could feel in the moment was just how completely worn out I was. So what I did was I went back to the Airbnb, and throughout the night, slowly, the rest of the family trickled in. Most of us on very opposite sides of the political scale. Just by default, we like to have Netflix or something on as some kind of background noise. And I guess the big victory of the night is that Storks was available. I put it on. And you know what? Everybody liked it. Everybody laughed. That's something. Hi there. I'm back. Sorry. Thank you. I know it's kind of a serious video, don't worry. They're not all like that. Also, by the way, to kind of give a sneak peek for things here on the channel, but also to hold myself to it, the next video is something that I'm really interested in. It's something I've been very excited to talk about, but it's such a big project that I just feel like I haven't had time for it lately. But here it is. It's gonna be about car marketing. I can't wait. There's so much to say. I've done quite a lot of research just in my off time. I think it's a fascinating topic. I'm looking forward to it, and it's probably going to be a long video if I can manage it. In the meantime, I hope you've been having a wonderful summer. I hope you've been finding plenty of time to do the things that you like. And until next time, take care. Ding.